She was a beautiful young woman with everything going for her.
She was like a ray of sunshine.
She just had this aura.
People were just naturally drawn to her.
Until one day, the unthinkable happened.
No one had heard from her since the night before.
It was so unlike her.
What happened to her and where did she go?
A desperate search unfolds.
They began knocking on doors, passing out flyers.
That's all you can think about, is finding her.
They're almost giving up. But then there's a glimmer of hope.
The family receives a text that says he's holding me in his basement.
I texted her back, dial 911.
Will rescue come in time, or is it already too late?
The story became more appalling.
It was just pure evil.
The question is why?
December 4th, 2009, Medford, New York. It's a peaceful Friday morning in this Long Island suburb, an hour east of Manhattan.
The reputation that Long Island has, it's where families live. Again, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. They can come home when the kids are playing in the driveway.
It's just a quiet neighborhood, quiet area. Not too much going on.
Local nurse Barbara Ross is finishing a grueling night shift at the hospital when her husband calls.
Hey, honey.
The first sign that something was wrong was that he called me at work.
Hey, have you heard from Becky?
Barbara's husband tells her that he's received a call about her daughter, 24-year-old Becky Coster.
She didn't show up for her job, and she didn't call in to her job. But she was a pretty responsible employee.
What?
That was very out of character for Becky, to not show up for work and not to tell her boss that she wasn't coming in.
Barbara's husband also says that Becky, who still lives with them, was not there this morning as he left for work.
I haven't seen her.
Are you sure? Did she come home?
I'm not sure. I didn't hear her come in.
She told me she was going out, who she was going out with, and as far as I knew, they were having a great time.
Could there be a simple explanation?
I thought maybe she had a little too much to drink and went to a friend's house.
Maybe she was just hungover. And, she overslept.
Just like everybody else, she enjoyed her time out.
I'll try to give her a call. I'll call you back.
Okay, love you.
Love you too.
After several attempts to reach Becky, her mother starts to worry.
I left several messages, and it was odd because Becky always answers her cell phone.
This is Becky. I'm not available right now, but if you leave your name and number, I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Honey, call me as soon as you get this.
She wasn't returning her text messages. She wasn't picking up her phone. She wasn't calling her.
Something just didn't feel right.
A mother's intuition is never wrong, but no one could have predicted how the search for Rebecca Coster would unfold. 24-year-old Becky Coster had a gift for making other people happy.
Becky was always cheerful. You weren't allowed to have a bad day if Becky was around.
Everybody had to be happy. Everybody had to have a good time. There's really no argument or bitterness around Becky.
She was gonna make you smile. She was like a ray of sunshine walking into the room.
It turned out to be a marketable skill that landed her a job as a caregiver.
She was a nursing assistant. She just likes working with people.
She worked with the handicapped. She helped so many other people in the world, and she had a great impact.
She loved helping others, whether they were young, whether they were old. In whatever aspect that she could, she was that kind-hearted person that cared for all.
Caring for others was something she'd learned firsthand from her family.
My family's a very loving family. We're always there for one another.
We were all together and just laughed, a lot of laughter, and sat down, had dinner every night, watched movies.
Becky was especially close to her mother.
Becky could talk to her mother about anything and confide in her, and they had a bond that was phenomenal.
In addition to a solid family foundation, Becky also maintained a healthy social life.
She had a very tight-knit group of friends that she was close with. They would go to the bars.
She loved to go out dancing. That was one of her favorite things.
And whenever she went out, there were always plenty of men vying for her attention.
Becky was absolutely gorgeous.
She had a bright, beautiful smile.
She just really lit up a room. She would go to a bar and all heads would turn to Becky.
Rebecca's love life was flourishing too when she began dating 28-year-old Thomas Herod.
Hi.
Hey.
Thomas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Becky.
Becky.
They met through mutual friends at a party.
He seemed like a decent guy. They seemed to get along together well. He seemed like he sincerely cared and was genuine to her, so she was happy.
Rebecca, however, was in no hurry to fully commit to Thomas.
She wasn't like, let's get married now, let's commit, I'm gonna be with you for the rest of my life. It wasn't anything like that. She was trying it out, see where it went.
I don't think that she really had anything solid in mind. She just kind of went where the wind would take her. She had just gotten out of a relationship, so she definitely was taking it slow. She just wanted to have fun and live her life and enjoy her life.
She had the perfect network of friends and family surrounding her, so things were good. She never had any real issues.
Until the morning of December 4th, 2009. After a night out with friends, Rebecca Coster has suddenly gone missing.
My first thoughts was, where the hell is she? Becky always answers her phone.
Becky's mother just wanted to hear from her daughter. She wanted to know that her daughter was safe.
At the end of her shift at the hospital, Barbara Ross rushes home and makes a chilling discovery.
Her pocketbook was there. She would never leave without her pocketbook.
Becky did, in fact, come home that night after being out with her friends.
Becky had been to the house. She had been home at some point, but now she was gone.
In early December 2009, 24-year-old Long Island nurse's aide Becky Coster has gone missing after a night out with friends.
Everyone's trying to reach Becky. Calling, texting.
She wasn't returning their phone calls, which was unlike her.
We just kept saying all that morning, something just doesn't feel right. It's just not right.
The fact that Becky had apparently come home at some point during the night and then left again only adds to the mystery.
The odd thing is that Becky's purse was on the table.
So we knew she came home. We definitely knew she came home. Just didn't know where she went after that.
Becky's cell phone wasn't in her purse, however.
Becky never leaves without her phone.
If that's the case, why hadn't she returned her mother's calls? In a panic, Barbara begins reaching out to Becky's friends.
I just started calling anybody and everybody we knew.
Becky's mother called her friend, Nicole. She knew that Becky had been out with Nicole the night before.
She was out with her boyfriend and some other friends.
But when Becky's mother reaches her, Nicole tells Barbara that she'd gone home a little after midnight and that Becky and her boyfriend, Thomas Herod, were still at the bar when she left.
They were gonna hang out for a while, and she had went home, and that was the last that she had seen of Becky.
However, Nicole says that as far as she knows, Thomas had driven Becky home.
She received a text from Becky letting her know that she arrived home safely.
When Becky's mom calls Thomas, he essentially tells her the same thing.
Thomas said yes. He dropped her off. It was around 3:30 in the morning.
And she never came back out?
No, I dropped her off and that was it.
He drove her home and he saw her go in the house.
I said, well, if you hear from her, anything, please just tell her to call me.
We're really worried. Something just isn't right.
Okay, Miss Ross. I'll let you know if I hear from her.
But as the hours pass, neither Thomas nor any of Becky's family have heard from her.
By 6 o'clock that evening, we knew something was wrong and we called the police and filed a missing persons report.
Becky's family also launches their own effort to find their missing loved one.
They didn't just sort of sit back and wait for things to unfold.
They're very, very concerned. So they go and get some flyers printed that has her image, making people aware that this young woman is missing and they need help trying to locate her.
We reached out to everybody that we possibly could.
Once Becky's family gets the word out that Becky is missing, they hope Becky's phone is the key to finding her.
Her phone wasn't at the house, so we knew she had it on her, and my husband at the time had said, try the family locator.
Since Becky's phone is on their family plan, her mother and stepfather can track its location, as well as her call history.
They have the software to do it, and they actually got a ping from Becky's cell phone. It was just 12 miles west of their home.
The family rushes to the neighborhood.
We knew if we found Becky's phone, we'd find Becky.
They're knocking on all the doors in the neighborhood with the flyers that have Becky's picture, asking people if they've seen this woman in the neighborhood.
Their hopes sink as there's no sign of Becky. Now desperate, the family scours her call log for clues.
The last phone number of incoming or outgoing calls or texts was an out-of-state number. We didn't know who it was. We asked all our friends, did anyone have this number stored in their phone? No one had that number.
The call had come just before 4 o'clock that morning.
It was after Tom had dropped her off. So yeah, there was definitely a lot more questions as to who was the person on the other end of that phone number.
Hoping Thomas might have some idea, Becky's mom decides to go see him in person.
I went to where he was staying. I went to that house and I spoke to him.
Thomas, do you recognize this number?
No?
Thomas says he doesn't know the number, but then he says something else, something that catches Becky's mother completely off guard.
He sort of drops a bombshell on her and says, do you think she's cheating on me?
What? Why would you even ask that?
Becky's mother was surprised at the question. She was shocked.
Becky's missing.
I just wanted to punch him in the face, to be honest. How dare you be questioning who she's dating when she's missing?
To Rebecca Coster's mother, the question isn't just upsetting, it's also suspicious.
The questions that he was asking definitely raised some eyebrows.
Becky's mom decides to go into his social media accounts to see, what activity is going there.
But little can prepare her for what she finds.
We were just dumbfounded.
Thomas had changed his name to Thomas the Killer.
24 hours after Becky Coster disappeared from her Long Island home, her family has begun to suspect that her boyfriend, Thomas Herod, knows what happened to her.
His actions, his movements just started to look a little sketchy. The name change was the most startling thing.
The last person to see her alive is her boyfriend, and he's changed one of his social media accounts to Thomas the Killer.
It doesn't add up. Thomas knows more than what he's letting on.
Because he was the last person who saw her, of course, we all thought that it was him.
Becky's mom is convinced that the boyfriend might have something to do with this, and so she takes all of her concerns and she brings it to the police.
When detectives hear what Becky's family has uncovered, they share her suspicions about Thomas.
How long have they been dating?
Not too long.
Was he abusive at all?
I'm not sure, but I feel Becky would have said something if he was. But he's been acting quite strange.
That immediately caused him to be a focus of the investigation.
He was the last person with her, especially with the actions he had taken in these last few hours and the questions that he was asking.
Detectives now have a suspect in the disappearance of Becky Coster. But where was Becky? And was she in danger?
Man, my promise. We'll do everything we can.
Thank you.
There are indicators that something bad has happened. The fact that she doesn't show up at her job and the fact that she's not responding to her family's phone calls when she always used to be very responsive. So the police were concerned.
Detectives turned their investigation to Becky's home.
They asked to see her room. They just wanted to know everything.
They took, all the information that they could at that time.
They looked for signs of foul play or signs of struggle.
Detectives find nothing to indicate a possible crime scene.
There's really nothing out of the ordinary in her room, nothing that appears to have happened there that would indicate that she'd been taken against her will.
After searching Becky's home, detectives' next step is to talk to her boyfriend.
Police bring Thomas in for questioning. He keeps to the same story he told Becky's mother. They went out to the bar, they had a few drinks.
At the end of the evening, he got her safely home. He walked her to her door and said goodnight to her.
He tells police, I saw her go into the house and then I went home.
That was the last time you seen or spoken to her?
Yes.
And you all didn't have a fight or anything like that?
No, we didn't have any problems.
When pressed by detectives, he denies having anything to do with Becky's disappearance.
If you didn't have any problems, then why did you think she was cheating on you?
I don't know. I didn't hurt her, though, I swear.
Thomas's responses to the accusations was, I didn't do it. I would never hurt her.
However, the next thing Thomas says has detectives wondering if he's telling the truth.
He told the police, I was starting to think that she was becoming distant, and I was starting to get the feeling that we were sort of growing apart.
He was definitely more serious than she was. She wasn't sure if she was going to stay with him.
Thomas tells police that their relationship had kind of cooled off, that everything was more casual now, and possibly she was seeing someone else.
Thomas also suggests that Becky might have hooked up with someone she met earlier that night at the bar.
She talked with other people there, as she often did. She was a very social person.
Although Thomas says that night, Becky had spent most of her time talking to one man in particular.
He tells police that when he went to the restroom, she was talking to someone else.
Thomas says he doesn't know who the man was and that the mystery man had slipped away as he saw Thomas approaching. But detectives can't help but wonder if the incident could have something to do with Becky's disappearance.
The fact that Becky may have been speaking to another guy at the bar and perhaps may have even been cheating on Thomas, this could have been potential motive for Thomas to want to harm her.
Police already know that Thomas was jealous. That was the first thing he had asked Becky's mom, was Becky cheating on him?
Thomas the Killer. Why would you make that your profile name?
It doesn't mean anything, all right? I did not hurt Becky.
While Thomas is still a top suspect,
Okay. You're free to go.
detectives have little choice but to let Thomas go and move on to their next lead.
The next step of the investigation is for police to go to the bar where Becky was that night.
The bar staff doesn't recall anything unusual about that night, but they do have surveillance cameras.
The business provides the police with a copy of their surveillance footage, and they look at it and they see that Becky's there with her friends.
Detectives scroll through the footage until they see what appears to be the mystery man Thomas described.
Upon Thomas leaving, as he said to go to the restroom, police do notice another man approach Becky.
They can tell by looking at their surveillance video that they've got their phones out and they exchange phone numbers.
Then, as Thomas returns, the mystery man makes a hasty retreat.
The police are starting to wonder, is this mystery guy in the surveillance video at the bar, is he the one that we should be looking at?
But who is he? Detectives ask Becky's friends and family to review the video in hopes of learning his identity.
They just asked if we knew who this person was, and we said no, don't know him. Asked all her friends, nobody knew, just came out of nowhere.
Did Thomas, in fact, see this man exchange phone numbers with Becky? And was that enough to drive Thomas to do something to Becky, to harm her in any way because of possible jealousy?
Detectives know that with each passing hour, the chances of finding Becky alive are dwindling.
This is the point where Becky's mom is really realizing that her daughter may never come home again.
I was just trying to keep up a happy face. Becky's gonna be fine. We're gonna find her. It's what you do. You just try to make things okay, even when they're not.
But a little before midnight on Sunday, December 6th, 2 days after Becky disappeared, Becky's mother is suddenly filled with hope.
Just when things are starting to look very bleak for the family, something extraordinary happens.
Becky's mom receives a text message from Becky's cell phone.
However, the message creates a new sense of panic.
He was holding her tied up in his basement.
It's been 2 days since 24-year-old Becky Coster disappeared, and her family has begun to lose hope.
We're still in limbo. There's no questions answered. All we could do was just be there and try to console each other and pray for the best.
But now, on December 6th, their prayers may have been answered.
Becky's mom receives a text from Becky in which Becky writes, "Thomas has me tied up in his basement."
Thomas Harrod is Becky's boyfriend, who previously claimed he dropped her off at home the night she disappeared.
Thomas is suspect number 1.
Upon receiving this text message, mom is like super excited. "Oh, my baby's okay."
I texted her back, "Becky, dial 911. Dial 911.
But there's no response from Becky, either text message or on calling her.
Unable to reach Becky, her mom calls the police.
Mom is calling the detective, says, "Listen, I just got this text from Becky." The family and police, they all rush in unison to Thomas's house.
All I could think of was, let's find Becky. Just wanted to find her.
Thomas meets the detectives at his door.
He told them, "I don't know where she is. She's not here. I'm not hiding her."
To prove it, he gives detectives permission to search his home.
Thomas is very cooperative. He lets the officers in. They search the house from top to bottom, including the basement.
They searched his house and the surrounding area, sheds and garage.
However, there is no sign of Becky.
They're still suspicious of Thomas. They're not quite ready to think that he's not involved here.
Becky's family continues searching around Thomas's house.
He lived in a wooded area, so we had quite a few people walking around calling Becky's name.
Becky's family once again tries the phone's built-in locator app.
It pings at a location farther from where she was before.
As Becky's location changes, her mother is still receiving text messages from Becky's phone.
There is another text message from Becky's phone saying, "I'm still with Thomas, he still has me." The family is able to track the location to a particular area in Long Island.
We would go wherever it would ping. We drove there. We would scream her name.
They're searching and searching, and they're asking people, but again, no sign of Becky.
While the family is chasing Becky's cell phone, detectives turn back to Becky's phone records.
They're obviously interested in the last numbers that had contact with her phone.
Most are family or friends, but one number stands out.
It was a number that was unknown to the police and unknown to her family.
That was the only odd number on Becky's list on her phone. So they were concentrating on that, trying to find out where that number came from.
They tracked the number to a man whose name is Evans Ganthier.
He's a Haitian immigrant. He was employed, he worked, he seemed like a regular guy.
Could he be the mystery man on the bar's security video?
Her family had never heard of Evans Ganthier, and none of her friends had ever heard of him either.
Once detectives identify Evans Ganthier as a person of interest, they bring him in for questioning.
They talked to him about where he was that night, what he was doing, what his interaction with Rebecca Coster was.
Evans did admit to police that, "Yeah, I did speak with her in the bar that night."
Yes, that's him on the surveillance video.
Although, according to Evans, there was nothing sinister about their interaction.
Look, we talked, we had a great conversation, and her boyfriend came back, and that's it.
Did you get her phone number?
Yeah.
Evans just said, yeah, we talked for a little bit. We even exchanged phone numbers. I said, hey, I want to meet with you. I want to talk with you. And she was like, I've got a boyfriend. I'm in a relationship. I really shouldn't even be giving you my phone number.
Despite Becky's reluctance, Evans admits that he'd made his move later that same morning, just as the phone records revealed.
Evans told police, I called her and said, hey, let's meet.
But according to Evans, Becky had shot him down.
She wasn't interested.
And that set you off?
No. There's plenty of fish in the sea.
Becky simply said she had a boyfriend. It was a mistake to exchange numbers, and that was that. They hung up, and he never had heard from Becky again.
After taking his statement, detectives have Evans give them fingerprints and a DNA sample, and then they let him go.
At this point, the police aren't quite sure what they've got.
They don't know if Evans is lying. They don't know if Thomas actually knew about Evans and got upset. They just don't know.
The answers are out there, however. On December 9th, the Long Island detectives get what could be a crucial tip from police in North Stonington, Connecticut.
In a case that has had so many twists and turns so far, the most shocking is yet to come.
There was a body found in Connecticut across the Long Island Sound.
As the police in Connecticut are trying to identify this person, they come across Becky's missing persons report, and they think this may be a match.
Family, friends, and police in Suffolk County, New York have spent the last 5 days searching for Becky Coster, a Long Island nurse's assistant who disappeared early on the morning of December 4th, 2009.
We put up flyers everywhere. We hung them wherever we searched. Everybody came out of the woodwork to help us.
However, even as Becky's friends and family searched, the police across the Long Island Sound have been trying to solve a mystery of their own. It was early on the morning of December 4th, the same day Becky disappeared, that a man spotted something unusual outside the small rural town of North Stonington, Connecticut.
Police in Connecticut had received word that there was a brush fire.
But when they arrive, police discover that this is no ordinary brush fire.
They find that it's actually human remains that had been set ablaze.
The victim was a young woman.
The fire burned her pretty bad. She had been soaked in gasoline. Her body was face up, so the front of her body, especially her torso and face, were pretty charred.
But that wasn't the most horrific injury the young woman suffered.
She had been mutilated as well. Her fingertips were missing. Places that appeared to have had tattoos had been cut out of her skin. So she was in pretty bad shape.
When the police see that the body has been mutilated in this way, they realize that it was an effort by the killer to prevent identification of the body.
The autopsy reveals how the young woman died.
The medical examiner said that the cause of death was stab wounds to the neck.
But who was she? Connecticut detectives search their database for missing persons and come across a potential match.
You take a look at this.
They come across one in the region that kind of fits the description of the Jane Doe that was found. And that person was Becky Coster.
Coordinating with Long Island police, Connecticut investigators are able to obtain Becky's dental records and confirm the woman's identity.
There is a match, and so they now know for sure that Becky has been found.
Once the body is identified, Long Island detectives deliver the crushing news that Becky is dead.
The detectives came to the house and they spoke with Barbara and her husband.
They asked me to sit down, and I just kept asking, it's bad news, isn't it? You found her, and it's bad news. They said, please just sit down. So I sat down, and they said, yes, we found her. It's going to be deemed a homicide. It just jumped up. I didn't want to hear another word. I couldn't listen to another word. Just don't say that. Don't say it. Somebody killed my baby.
We were all emotionally overwhelmed when we first heard the news. But as we were able to compose ourselves and start talking, we were able to say that those messages she didn't send.
When we were getting the text messages, we legitimately thought that it was Becky.
Now that they know the timeline in which Becky was killed, they immediately can deduce that the text messages didn't come from Becky.
We received those messages, and she was already gone.
Who would be so cruel? Detectives believe the answer lies with Becky's cell phone.
Whoever killed Becky is still in possession of her cell phone.
The person responsible for Becky's death was the one actually sending these text messages to them saying that she's still alive.
It was cold, it was calculating, and her killer seemed to almost be having fun.
For detectives, the timing and content of the text messages suggests that Becky's boyfriend, Thomas Herod, isn't responsible.
Why would he send a text message to Becky's mom that seemed to implicate him as holding her hostage in the basement of his house?
Becky's killer was obviously trying to set Thomas up.
So he was no longer a suspect. I felt bad. I still feel bad. We came after him really hard, as any parent would. And to this day, I regret that. But when you're looking for your child, anybody, gets in your way is gonna get run down. And when I saw that he changed his name to the killer, I was like, what an idiot. Because if you're innocent, you just made yourself look guilty.
With Thomas essentially ruled out, detectives focus in on their remaining suspect, Evans Ganthier, the man who'd hit on Becky at the bar on the night she disappeared. And detectives believe they have evidence that could connect him to the crime.
The killer has made one mistake. The body had been wrapped in a plastic wrap and a blanket and sealed with duct tape before it had been set on fire.
The crime scene investigators were able to lift a partial fingerprint from a burned piece of duct tape.
So now they need to compare that to Evan Ganthier's fingerprints.
After police in Connecticut found Rebecca Coster's burned and mutilated body dumped beside a rural road, detectives on Long Island are investigating her murder. And they've just made what appears to be a major breakthrough.
Becky's killer has left a partial fingerprint on a piece of the burnt duct tape.
It was a good fingerprint that would be suitable for comparison.
But will it lead police to her killer?
When the police compared the fingerprints to Evan Ganthier's fingerprints, it's a match.
Within hours, detectives take the 37-year-old Haitian immigrant into custody.
When his fingerprints were a match, they went back and arrested him.
Detectives also search Evans' house and his car.
They searched his home. There was no blood, there was no sign of a struggle or violence, although they did find in his garage, on the garage floor, that it had signs that it had been cleaned pretty thoroughly.
But Evans' car hasn't been cleaned.
When they searched the car, they actually found a pool of blood under the passenger seat, and they also found some bloodstains in the luggage compartment in the back.
They are convinced they have their killer.
Hoping for a confession, detectives sit down with Evans and confront him with what they found.
We have your prints on the tape that you used to wrap her up. You need to tell us what happened.
It's not how it looks.
Evans sticks to his story, how they met at the bar, they exchanged phone numbers.
Earlier, Evans claimed he'd called Becky that morning, only to be shot down. But now, under pressure from detectives, his story starts to change.
He admits, okay, yes, we did hang out that night.
Evans tells police he goes to her house, he picks her up, and she's in the car, and they're just driving around.
Evans admits they'd eventually ended up back at his house, but he swears that her death was an accident.
He tells police that as she is walking through his garage, she trips over some dumbbells, falls, and hits her head.
She fell, and I just panicked.
He claims that he had nothing to do with her dying.
However, while Evans denies killing Becky, he does admit to getting rid of her body.
He just decided to roll her in plastic and a blanket and then go and dispose of her.
But he denied all along that he had killed her.
The detectives don't buy a word of it.
Even if you accept at face value that she died accidentally, what kind of person reacts by taking the body to another state and mutilating it and setting it on fire?
Police knew that Evans Ganthier was Becky Coster's killer.
They finally found the demon that did it.
But while Becky's family rejoices that the killer has been caught, his identity comes as a complete surprise.
When the detectives told us who they arrested, we had not a clue as to who this person was.
None of her friends had ever met or knew anyone with that name.
When he goes on trial for murder in August of 2013, the prosecution contends that there's no reasonable doubt that Evans was Becky's killer.
They had so much irrefutable evidence.
The fingerprint on the duct tape, the pool of Becky's blood in the car that Ganthier was using, the surveillance video at the bar showing them meeting.
However, exactly how Becky died remains shrouded in mystery.
Police aren't exactly sure what happened, but somehow Evans was able to convince Becky to come out of her house and to go for a ride with him.
According to the prosecution, it was no secret what Evans had in mind when he lured Becky into his car.
He wanted to have sex with her.
Evans wanted Becky from the moment he saw her at that bar. He was determined to have her.
However, prosecutors believe Becky had ultimately rejected Evans' advances.
Stop.
She said no.
Get away from me.
Prosecution believed that he reacted angrily and violently.
He wasn't going to take no for an answer, and he killed her for it.
Then, once Evans had stabbed her, he'd driven Becky to his house and mutilated her body in his garage.
He removes some of her body parts. He also cuts off a tattoo on her back, trying to make it impossible for the authorities to identify her.
After Evans loaded her body in his trunk, he took the ferry across the Long Island Sound and drove several miles inland to a quiet stretch of road outside of North Stonington.
Then he dumped her and set her on fire.
He really thought that he was going to get away with it.
Just to make sure, he'd used Becky's phone to cover his tracks.
The demon had been texting us.
He wanted to pin it on her boyfriend.
One thing in this case that sort of demonstrates the pure evil of Evans Ganthier is sending text messages to the family, giving them this false hope that she's alive.
But the defense insists that Evans never intended to harm Rebecca.
Evans' defense team stick with the story that he gave police, that she tripped, she fell, she hit her head on a dumbbell.
However, Evans' version of events doesn't match the coroner's listed cause of death, and there's no getting past the mountain of evidence.
Evans Ganthier is convicted of second-degree murder.
He was sentenced to the maximum, which is 25 years to life.
As soon as the verdict is read, Becky's mother feels a burden has been lifted.
It was like taking a deep breath. This part is done.
The family also knows that they must remain vigilant.
When it comes up for parole, I'm gonna have to go there and tell my story, and not looking forward to that.
We shouldn't have to sit in front of a parole board. He should never see the light of day.
In the meantime, the family still struggles to deal with the pain of losing Becky.
Becky was the epitome of love. Her heart was tremendous, and she extended it to all. And she lived her life every day, one of the happiest, kind souls on this planet.
I just want to see people being good to one another, just like she was.
The bitter winter wind howling off Boston Harbor in December 1999 did not just bite at the frost-covered brownstones of Beacon Hill. It carried a suffocating, unbearable tension that froze an entire community in its tracks. It was a city of historic brick facades, narrow cobblestone alleyways, and deep-seated neighborhood loyalties where everyone knew their neighbor's name, their habits, and their children. But beneath the warm holiday lights and the festive cheer of the approaching millennium, a terrifying nightmare struck the heart of a quiet residential street. A vibrant, 20-year-old college student vanished into the winter night without a single footprint in the fresh snow, leaving behind an open front door, a pot of tea still warm on the stove, and a chilling void that would tear a tight-knit circle apart and torment investigators for more than a quarter of a century. When dawn broke over the frost-glazed rooftops, the silence in the apartment was deafening. Her coat, her car keys, and her purse were sitting untouched on the entryway table. There was no sign of a forced entry, no shattered glass, no defensive struggle, and no frantic call for help. Within 48 hours, the full horror materialized in a desolate, snow-choked industrial park miles away near the Neponset River. A highway maintenance crew stumbled upon a heartbreaking sight that veteran homicide detectives would never erase from their memories. A young life discarded in the freezing mud, bearing the brutal, undeniable marks of a calculated and profoundly personal attack. There were no stray fingerprints on the victim's clothing, no foreign hair strands, and no weapon left behind. Only a microscopic trace of fiber and an untraceable biological mixture that late 90s forensic science lacked the molecular resolution to decode. Sirens echoed off the brick canyons as the media descended like a pack of wolves. Headlines screamed across the front pages of morning dailies. Cold case nightmare. Suburban panic. Fear spread like wildfire through the tight-knit neighborhood. Deadbolts were thrown on doors that had remained unlocked for generations, and porch lights burned until dawn, casting nervous, twitching shadows across empty driveways. Detectives worked around the clock in smoke-filled precinct rooms, running down hundreds of frantic tips, hauling in local ex-cons, and interviewing every acquaintance within a 50-mile radius. Yet every single lead dissolved into thin air. It was as if the killer was a ghost, stepping out of the winter darkness to strike and evaporating back into the ether without leaving a ripple. Weeks bled into months. Months collapsed into decades. The yellowing case file, once the center of intense municipal fury, grew thick with dead ends and false leads before slowly, tragically, being relegated to the bottom drawer of an archival cabinet. The turn of the millennium rolled into the digital age, and generations of investigators picked up the dusty binders, stared at the faded crime scene photographs, and retired with the same bitter, unresolved weight pressing against their chests. The world moved on, but the victim's family remained trapped in a perpetual, freezing December of 1999, haunted by a faceless monster who seemed to have slipped through the fingers of the law forever. What the world did not know, what no detective could have fathomed during those desperate decades, was that the monster was neither a stranger lurking in the dark nor a transient drifter passing through the city. He was closer than anyone could have ever imagined. He was the person who sat at the kitchen table sharing coffee with a grieving family, the loyal confidant who helped carry the casket at the funeral, and the childhood best friend who comforted the victim's mother while weeping genuine tears of sorrow. For over 25 years, he wore the ultimate disguise of innocence, standing shoulder to shoulder with the community while guarding the darkest secret of Boston's criminal history. The squad room of the Boston Police Department's Homicide Division in the winter of 1999 was a chaotic, freezing nexus of ringing telephones, floating coffee steam, and relentless, grinding frustration. Large corkboards dominated the back wall, pinned with crime scene photographs, maps of the city's transit lines, and dozens of potential suspect leads that were systematically checked, verified, and subsequently crossed out in heavy red marker. Detectives worked around the clock in shifts that blurred together, their breath visible in the drafty, poorly heated precinct rooms, chasing ghosts across a city paralyzed by fear. The public was terrified, and the switchboards were jammed with frantic callers offering unverified sightings, wild theories, and vindictive accusations against local figures. Yet every promising avenue of inquiry led straight to an unyielding wall. The perpetrator had left no footprints in the light Boston snow, no discarded weapon near the riverbanks, and no digital footprints to trace in an era when mobile phones were basic bricks and internet surveillance was in its infancy. The victim, 20-year-old Claire Sullivan, was the radiant epicenter of a close-knit, loyal circle of childhood friends who had grown up together on the historic brick-paved streets of the South End. She was a nursing student known for her fierce compassion, her infectious laugh, and a quiet strength that made her the emotional anchor of her peer group. On the night she vanished, Claire had been studying for her organic chemistry finals in her third-floor apartment, her desk lamp casting a warm glow against the frost-covered window panes. Her front door showed no signs of a forced entry, no splintered wood, no picked lock, no shattered glass. The deadbolt had not been thrown, suggesting she either unlocked the door willingly or the intruder possessed a key. Inside the apartment, a kettle sat half full on the unlit stove, and her favorite woolen scarf was draped over the back of the sofa, exactly where she had left it. She had stepped out into the freezing December night, or had been escorted away by someone she trusted completely, never to return alive. When Claire's body was recovered 48 hours later by harbor patrol units near the frozen marshlands of the Neponset River, the forensic reality of the crime painted a picture of calculated, terrifying intimacy. The medical examiner's preliminary findings confirmed that she had been overpowered with chilling efficiency, subjected to a brief and violent struggle, and asphyxiated before being transported to the desolate water's edge under the cover of darkness. The killer had meticulously cleaned the primary abduction site, wiping down surfaces and ensuring that no stray hairs, fibers, or fingerprints were left behind for investigators to collect. The only physical evidence recovered from the damp clothing was a microscopic mixture of degraded touch DNA and a faint, unidentifiable synthetic fiber. Clues that 1999 forensic technology could analyze only to the level of broad biological grouping, rendering them virtually useless against a city of millions. As the days turned into weeks, the intense media spotlight began to dim, leaving behind a grieving family and a baffled police department. Detectives interviewed every ex-boyfriend, every casual acquaintance, and every registered offender within a 20-mile radius. They pulled employment rosters, checked delivery schedules, and interrogated local vagrants who slept beneath the bridges near the harbor. Yet, every single individual vetted by the department provided verifiable alibis or was completely cleared by circumstance. The case file grew thick with unverified tips and false confessions, eventually migrating from the active homicide desks down into the dark, climate-controlled filing vaults of the cold case archive. The binders were stacked neatly in rows beneath flickering fluorescent lights, gathering dust while the city of Boston marched forward into a new millennium, leaving Claire Sullivan's memory trapped in the bitter winter of 1999. What the investigators did not realize, what no detective could have possibly deduced from the physical evidence alone, was that the perpetrator had been sitting in the very center of the investigation from day one. He was not a stranger lurking in the dark alleys or a violent drifter passing through the harbor. He was the person who knew Claire's deepest secrets, her daily routines, and her apartment layout better than anyone else. He was her childhood best friend, the loyal, soft-spoken companion who had stood beside her family at the memorial service, who had helped hang missing person flyers on neighborhood lampposts, and who had spent the last 2 decades shedding genuine tears of sorrow with Claire's mother while quietly harboring the most monstrous secret in Boston's criminal history. The relentless march of 2 decades did little to cool the raw, jagged pain etched into the hearts of Claire Sullivan's family, nor did it extinguish the quiet determination of a dedicated few within the Boston Police Department who refused to let her case rot away in the archives. By the mid-2020s, forensic technology had undergone a tectonic revolution that changed the rules of engagement for unsolved homicides. Traditional DNA profiling, which had hit a brick wall in 1999 when faced with degraded touch samples and mixed biological traces, was entirely eclipsed by the emergence of investigative genetic genealogy and high-throughput cellular sequencing. Cold case detectives across the country were suddenly unlocking decades-old mysteries by transforming microscopic biological ghosts into expansive, multi-generational family trees. In early 2025, a newly formed cold case strike force in Boston formally pulled Claire's file from the subterranean vaults. They signed out the original evidence boxes containing item 99-0412, the microscopic biological residue recovered from the victim's winter coat. The sample was carefully packaged and transported to an advanced private forensic laboratory specializing in low-template DNA extraction. Analysts utilized cutting-edge whole genome amplification to isolate the killer's cellular profile from the background noise of environmental contamination. For weeks, the laboratory equipment whirred through millions of base pairs until a clean, high-density single nucleotide polymorphism profile was successfully generated. When that profile was uploaded into public genealogical databases under strict judicial oversight, the algorithmic results did not return a zero. Instead, the screen populated with dozens of distant genetic matches, second and third cousins scattered across New England, the Midwest, and parts of Canada. A team of elite forensic genealogists immediately went to work, constructing a massive, inverted family tree that spanned 5 generations, tracing historical census records, birth certificates, marriage registries, and obituary archives back to 19th century immigrant roots in Massachusetts. The painstaking process of pruning the tree took over 6 months. Female branches were eliminated. Older male relatives who had passed away long before 1999 were crossed off, and individuals with ironclad alibis were systematically cleared. Slowly, methodically, the sprawling genealogical map narrowed down to a single bloodline and eventually to a single living individual whose life was deeply, inextricably interwoven with the tragic history of the Sullivan family. That individual was not a shadowy criminal with a sprawling rap sheet or a transient drifter who had slipped out of the city. It was Marcus Vance, Claire Sullivan's inseparable childhood best friend, the man who had grown up across the street, shared holidays at her family's dinner table, and remained a steadfast, comforting presence in her mother's life for the past 26 years. The revelation hit the cold case unit like a physical blow. The monster had not been hiding in the shadows. He had been sitting comfortably in the light, shielded by the ultimate armor of trusted companionship. Detectives immediately initiated a comprehensive, covert surveillance operation to secure a direct, unassailable DNA sample from Marcus Vance. For 2 weeks, plainclothes officers tracked his daily routines across the city. They watched him commute to his job as a senior architectural draftsman, stop by his local coffee shop, and tend to his Beacon Hill townhouse. He carried himself with the quiet, unassuming confidence of an upstanding citizen, showing no outward sign of a man carrying the crushing weight of a quarter-century-old murder. The critical breakthrough occurred on a brisk Tuesday morning when Marcus dropped a disposable paper coffee cup into a public waste receptacle outside a subway station. Within seconds, an undercover operative retrieved the discarded cup, securing it in a sterile biohazard container before rushing it directly to the state police crime laboratory. The comparative analysis was executed with emergency priority. At 3 a.m., the lab director signed off on the definitive report, a direct, multi-point DNA match across all 24 core loci. The probability of a random coincidence was less than 1 in several hundred billion. Marcus Vance's genetic blueprint matched the trace evidence left on Claire Sullivan's coat in December 1999 with absolute, mathematical perfection. 48 hours later, a Superior Court judge signed the arrest warrant. The takedown was swift, silent, and devastatingly absolute. As Marcus stepped out of his apartment building early on a crisp Thursday morning, federal marshals and Boston homicide detectives converged on him from all sides, placing him in heavy steel handcuffs before he could utter a single word of protest. When the news broke across national media networks, Boston 1999 cold case solved, victim's childhood best friend taken into custody, the city reeled in a state of profound shock and collective heartbreak. The neighbor who had helped carry the casket, who had dried the mother's tears and who had spent decades playing the part of the devoted friend, was unmasked as the brutal predator who ended Claire's life. As Marcus sat in an interrogation room facing charges of first-degree murder, the 26-year-old illusion finally shattered, bringing a legendary cold case to a stunning, earth-shattering close and delivering a long-overdue measure of justice to a family that had never stopped waiting for the truth. The heavy metal doors of the Suffolk County Superior Courthouse swung open with a resounding, hollow clang that cut through the tense murmurs of the crowded gallery, instantly silencing the assembly of reporters, sketch artists, and stunned community members who had packed the room to capacity. Outside, the slate-gray Boston sky hung low over historic brick streets, casting a somber, chilling mood that mirrored the gravity unfolding inside the chamber. Marcus Vance was led into the courtroom clad in a standard orange correctional jumpsuit, his wrists and ankles bound in heavy iron shackles that clicked rhythmically against the polished floor with every measured step. The man who had worn the flawless, impenetrable mask of a devoted childhood friend and upstanding architectural draftsman for over a quarter of a century looked visibly aged, his shoulders slightly rounded, his expression frozen in a cold, unreadable mask of stoic detachment as he approached the defense table. As Marcus took his seat beside his court-appointed defense attorneys, the state's lead prosecutor rose to deliver the opening statement, laying out the prosecution's case with chilling, surgical precision. The prosecutor did not rely on emotional appeals or speculative theater. Instead, the devastating weight of modern science spoke with deafening volume. High-resolution digital displays across the courtroom lit up with exhibits detailing the genetic genealogy tree, the genealogical breadcrumbs spanning 5 generations, and the definitive, multi-point molecular DNA match extracted from the microscopic fiber on Claire Sullivan's winter coat. The state systematically walked the jury through the dark anatomy of the crime, demonstrating how a trusted childhood confidant had leveraged his absolute intimacy with the victim, his knowledge of her apartment layout, and her complete lack of defensive suspicion to commit a brutal, premeditated murder on a freezing December night in 1999, before seamlessly slipping back into the fabric of ordinary society to play the role of the grieving mourner. The defense attorneys mounted a fragile, desperate defense centered on procedural technicalities, attempting to challenge the chain of custody for the historical touch DNA samples and questioning the statistical validity of long-range genealogical databases. But their arguments disintegrated completely during cross-examination when the state introduced the pristine coffee cup sample collected under airtight Fourth Amendment protocols, accompanied by expert testimony from forensic geneticists who confirmed a statistical probability of 1 in several hundred billion. The defense rested its case within 3 days, having offered virtually no substantive refutation to the overwhelming mountain of biological and behavioral evidence presented by the prosecution. When the jury returned from their deliberations after less than 2 hours, a remarkably swift conclusion for a high-profile historical murder trial, the foreperson stood to deliver the verdict. The courtroom held its breath, the silence so absolute that the hum of the overhead ventilation units sounded like a rising gale. Count by count, the verdict rang out across the chamber with uncompromising finality: guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Claire Sullivan's mother, sitting in the front row of the gallery clutching a faded photograph of her daughter against her heart, closed her eyes as silent tears streamed down her face. There were no gasps of disbelief in the room, only a collective, heavy exhale of profound, long-overdue relief as the inescapable wheels of justice finally completed their 26-year rotation. The formal sentencing hearing, held 3 weeks later, brought the raw, unyielding emotional devastation of the crime into sharp, agonizing focus. Family members stepped up to the podium one by one, reading powerful victim impact statements that detailed more than 2 decades of empty holidays, silent bedrooms, and a grief that time refused to soften. When the presiding judge finally turned his attention to the defendant, offering him the customary opportunity to address the court before the final penalty was handed down, Marcus Vance stood slowly, adjusted his posture, and looked toward the gallery with empty, vacant eyes. The courtroom leaned forward, waiting for a confession, an explanation, or a shred of remorse. Instead, Marcus offered only a cold, chilling silence, mumbling a brief, dismissive statement maintaining his innocence and vowing to appeal the verdict. The judge's voice cut through the heavy air like a razor blade, cataloging the monstrous betrayal of trust, the calculated execution of a young woman who trusted him above all others, and the unprecedented audacity of hiding behind a mask of friendship while comforting the victim's grieving family year after year. Without a moment of hesitation, the judge handed down the maximum statutory penalty, a mandatory sentence of natural life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that the predator who had shattered a community would spend every remaining day of his existence behind maximum security concrete walls. As the bailiff stepped forward, unlocking the wooden gate and grasping Marcus by the arms to lead him away, the heavy iron shackles clinked against the floor one final time. The definitive, permanent sound of a Boston cold case brought to absolute, unyielding closure. The heavy steel doors of the Massachusetts Correctional Institution slammed shut with a final, echoing metallic thud that reverberated through the damp, subterranean corridors of maximum security. Marcus Vance was processed, stripped of his civilian attire, and issued a standard-issue orange jumpsuit bearing an inmate identification number across the chest. The man who had walked freely along the historic brick streets of Boston, who had shared coffee with grieving relatives and maintained the flawless public facade of a respected architectural draftsman for over 26 years, was now reduced to a number inside a claustrophobic concrete cell block. Placed under 23-hour administrative segregation, his world shrank overnight from the wide expanses of Beacon Hill to a windowless cage measuring 6 by 9 feet. There were no more drafting tables to occupy his hands, no friendly neighborhood chats to maintain his polite mask, and no hiding behind the comforting illusion of innocence. Stripped of his freedom and his carefully constructed lifetime of deception, Marcus faced an endless, unbroken expanse of silent days where the only thing keeping him company was the inescapable gravity of his own monstrous past. Back on the streets of Boston, the physical and emotional footprint of the case continued to leave a profound mark on the community. The apartment building where Claire Sullivan had lived and studied in December 1999 remained a poignant historical touchstone for local residents, a place where new generations of students paused to reflect on the fragility of life and the dark realities hidden behind friendly smiles. Although the decades had brought architectural changes and modernization to the historic South End, the neighborhood's collective memory of Claire, her vibrant laughter, her compassion, and her tragic loss, remained fiercely preserved. Local community groups and student organizations at her former university established an annual scholarship fund in her name, dedicated to supporting aspiring nursing students who shared her fierce dedication to helping others. The ripple effects of the Boston 1999 cold case resolution extended far beyond Massachusetts, serving as a landmark milestone in the national evolution of investigative genetic genealogy and cold case jurisprudence. Criminologists, forensic scientists, and investigative journalists across the country dissected the case in academic seminars and media specials, focusing on the psychological phenomenon of the trusted predator, the offender who embeds himself within the victim's inner circle to evade suspicion. The case provided a powerful blueprint for law enforcement agencies nationwide, demonstrating how combining advanced low-template DNA profiling with long-range genealogical databases can unmask even the most patient and elusive criminals, proving that time alone is no longer a safe haven for those who take a life and walk away. For the family of Claire Sullivan, the conclusion of the legal proceedings brought a bittersweet, profound transition from decades of agonizing limbo to a permanent, solemn state of closure. With Marcus Vance securely locked behind bars for the rest of his natural life, Claire's mother and surviving relatives found a measure of peace, knowing that the man who had betrayed their trust and shattered their world had finally been held fully accountable. They dedicated their remaining years to advocating for missing and murdered young adults, partnering with national nonprofit coalitions to ensure that other families searching for answers would never give up hope. The quarter-century-long nightmare that had paralyzed a Boston family and baffled investigators was finally over, closed not by a lucky break or a deathbed confession, but by the relentless, unyielding march of truth, science, and justice. The institutional quiet of the maximum security cell block was an unyielding, oppressive vacuum, entirely devoid of the familiar sounds of Boston Harbor or the rustle of autumn leaves on Beacon Hill. Inside his isolated concrete cage, Marcus Vance lived in a state of absolute, uninterrupted stillness. The architectural drafting tools that had once filled his hands with purposeful design were gone. The polite, soft-spoken facade that had fooled a grieving family for over 26 years had been stripped away by the harsh glare of judicial reality. In the absolute silence of his cell, the intricate psychological armor he had constructed, the calculated smiles, the shared holiday dinners, the comforting hugs offered to Claire Sullivan's mother, evaporated, leaving him entirely exposed to the crushing, inescapable truth of his own actions. There were no more alibis to fabricate, no more courtroom appeals to anticipate, and no more shadows to hide within. He was simply a prisoner wearing an orange jumpsuit, trapped forever in the inescapable consequence of a winter night in 1999. Far beyond the prison walls, the cultural and academic impact of the Boston 1999 cold case resolution continued to reshape the landscape of forensic investigation and criminal psychology across the United States. Criminologists, law enforcement trainers, and investigative journalists utilized the Marcus Vance case as a definitive textbook study on the chilling psychology of the inner circle predator, the offender who exploits absolute intimacy and trusted companionship to execute a crime and evade suspicion for decades. Academic symposia dissected how Vance had maintained his composure, volunteering at memorial gatherings and standing shoulder to shoulder with grieving relatives while guarding his horrific secret. Police departments nationwide integrated these psychological profiles into their advanced cold case training, emphasizing that investigators must always rigorously scrutinize the closest friends and most trusted confidants when traditional leads run dry. The technological triumph of the case also served as a watershed moment for the broader acceptance and deployment of investigative genetic genealogy in historical homicide investigations. Laboratories and prosecutorial offices across New England and beyond cited the Boston breakthrough as undeniable proof that degraded touch DNA samples, once written off as useless environmental noise, could be successfully rescued through whole genome amplification and matched against public genealogical networks. State legislatures began reviewing historical cold case budgets, allocating dedicated funding for advanced genealogical sequencing to unlock decades-old mysteries that had languished in archive vaults for generations. The message to hidden predators was absolute and unequivocal. Technological evolution has permanently erased the statute of limitations on murder. In the historic South End of Boston, the community continued to honor Claire Sullivan's memory through enduring acts of compassion and remembrance. The annual nursing scholarship established in her name at her former university grew substantially, providing financial support and professional mentorship to dozens of dedicated students entering the healthcare field each year. The scholarship committee ensured that Claire's legacy was defined not by the brutal manner of her departure, but by her fierce compassion, her radiant spirit, and her lifelong dream of helping others heal. Neighbors and alumni gathered annually on the anniversary of her passing to light candles, share stories, and reaffirm their commitment to keeping her memory bright against the chill of winter. For Claire's family, the years following the trial brought a quiet, profound healing, a restoration of peace after more than a quarter-century of agonizing uncertainty. They no longer had to wonder who had stolen their beloved daughter's future, nor did they have to endure the agonizing hypocrisy of a killer sitting at their table pretending to share their grief. With Marcus Vance spending his remaining natural days behind maximum security bars, the circle of justice was finally complete. The quarter-century nightmare that had haunted a Boston family and baffled investigators came to its ultimate, rightful conclusion, leaving behind a legacy of resilience, the unyielding power of modern science, and the eternal certainty that truth will always find its way back to the light. The heavy steel door of maximum security confinement locked into place with an authoritative, mechanical finality that severed the last remaining ties to the outside world, leaving Marcus Vance suspended in an eternal, suffocating vacuum of gray concrete and humming fluorescent light. Inside his windowless cell, Time lost its familiar markers, dissolving into an unbroken sequence of silent, claustrophobic hours where the mind had nowhere to hide and no external distraction to drown out the unyielding echoes of the past. The intricate psychological compartments he spent 4 decades constructing, the polite neighborly waves, the professional draftsmanships, the quiet community involvement, and the impenetrable camouflage of ordinary respectability, had been obliterated beyond repair. He was no longer the respected local designer or the trusted childhood friend sharing memories over a kitchen table. He was simply an inmate in an orange jumpsuit, living out his remaining days in absolute, uninterrupted confrontation with the horrific reality of what he had done to Claire Sullivan on a freezing December night in 1999. His freedom was completely erased, and the decades of guarded silence had dissolved into a permanent, inescapable captivity from which there was no parole, no appeal, and no escape. Far beyond the prison walls, the monumental legacy of the Boston 1999 cold case continued to reverberate across the global landscape of criminal justice, forensic science, and investigative methodology, serving as an unyielding testament to the persistence of truth. The case remained a foundational textbook study in academic lecture halls and law enforcement training academies worldwide, instructing new generations of detectives on how to dismantle the invisible camouflage of the sophisticated inner-circle predator. It stood as a permanent, haunting reminder that evil does not always announce itself with chaos, threats, or a criminal record. Sometimes it wears a clean polo shirt, offers a sympathetic nod to a grieving mother, and hides in plain sight behind the quiet normalcy of lifelong friendship. The rigorous investigative protocols forged from those decades of agonizing silence permanently transformed how modern agencies approach historical missing persons files, ensuring that no cold case is ever written off as a permanent dead end and no victim is ever abandoned to the dust of archival neglect. The Claire Sullivan Memorial Nursing Fund expanded its reach across New England and beyond, transforming a historical tragedy into an enduring engine of life and healing. Supported by continuous donations from community organizations, university alumni, and healthcare foundations, the fund provided full academic scholarships to dozens of dedicated nursing students each year. Recipients of the scholarship were selected not only for their academic excellence, but for their embodiment of Claire's core qualities: profound empathy, unyielding resilience, and a fierce, unwavering commitment to caring for the vulnerable. Every time a new cohort of young nurses donned their white coats and walked across the graduation stage, Claire's radiant spirit was carried forward into hospitals, clinics, and communities across the country, ensuring that her dream of healing others lived on through generations she never lived to see. In the historic South End of Boston, the neighborhood where Claire had laughed, studied, and walked with her childhood friends remained a place of quiet remembrance and collective strength. The brownstone apartment building where she spent her final collegiate days stood as a silent witness to history, its exterior carefully preserved while new generations of students built their futures within its walls. Neighbors and community members gathered every December to place white winter roses on the steps, honoring her memory with dignity and grace. The profound shock of her betrayal by someone so close had long since transformed into a deeper, more mature understanding of community vigilance, a shared vow that no young person in their midst would ever be forgotten, and that friendship would always be guarded by a vigilant, protective love. As each annual anniversary of her passing arrived, hundreds of community members, advocates, and grief-stricken families gathered together in a solemn candlelight vigil along the snow-dusted brick pathways of the city. Claire's mother, standing before the assembled crowd as a quiet symbol of unshakable grace and eternal strength, addressed the gathering not with words of bitterness or despair, but with a profound message of hope, unity, and the unbreakable power of truth. The 26-year nightmare that once paralyzed a Boston family had long since passed into history, leaving behind a world forever altered, permanently fortified by the knowledge that no matter how much time passes, and no matter how deeply a monster attempts to bury their sins, justice will always find its way back to the light.